really thought of herself as a drummer.
Is that right?
Which is amazing to me. Didn't she know how well she sang?
She did, but I'd heard stories through the years that Bing Crosby always thought of himself as a golfer who sang. Karen, for as much as she loves to sing, and it was inborn.
Karen Carpenter, along with her brother Richard Carpenter, sold millions of records.
The story of Karen Carpenter isn't just one of melodic brilliance or chart-topping hits. It's the haunting chronicle of a young woman who sang with the voice of an angel while silently battling demons no one could see.
Ow.
When we think of Karen, we think of grace, of ballads that soothed aching hearts, and of harmonies that lifted souls. But the spotlight that bathed her in stardom also cast long shadows over her personal life. And now, decades after her death, her brother Richard Carpenter, her lifelong musical partner and closest companion, has finally begun to speak about the rumors, the truths, and the silence that once protected a heartbreaking reality. Behind the soft, sorrowful eyes and radiant stage presence was a woman burdened by family expectations, societal standards, and an illness misunderstood in her time. From childhood, Karen struggled to find her place in a home that celebrated her brother's talents while treating her own as secondary. Their mother, Agnes, never disguised her favoritism toward Richard. It wasn't cruelty in the traditional sense, it was something colder, an emotional distance, a persistent implication that Karen simply wasn't enough. And yet, despite that dynamic, Karen clung to her brother. She adored him, relied on him, and in many ways built her identity around his. For a time, this sibling bond gave her purpose. Together, they pursued music first, as children guided by their father's love of sound, and later as a duo destined for fame. But the very closeness that gave Karen her start also kept her in a cycle of seeking approval, suppressing her needs, and denying her growing pain. When the Carpenters broke onto the scene, it felt like a breath of fresh air in an industry dominated by loud guitars and rebellion. Karen's voice was pure and unforced, floating effortlessly through songs like Close to You and We've Only Just Begun. But even as they collected Grammys and dominated Billboard charts, Karen's sense of self-worth remained fragile. Fame amplified every insecurity. It didn't take long for the media, even her own inner circle, to begin commenting on her appearance. One unflattering photo, one careless remark about her weight, and the seed of a dangerous obsession was planted. Richard, for all his musical genius and protective instincts, admits now that he didn't understand the depth of her struggle. While he battled his own addiction to sleeping pills, he missed the signs: her growing thinness, her secret habits, her increasingly withdrawn behavior. Their grueling tour schedule didn't help. Always expected to be flawless on stage, Karen began controlling the only thing she could: her body. At first it was dieting. Then it became much darker. Laxatives, thyroid medications, induced vomiting. It was a descent into anorexia nervosa, condition barely recognized by the medical community at the time. Richard has since acknowledged that while he was fighting his demons, he didn't grasp the urgency of Karen's. By the time he realized she needed serious help, the damage was well underway. Karen's pursuit of perfection extended beyond the stage and into her personal relationships. She yearned not just for fame, but for love, for the simple human need to be cherished and accepted. She had dated a few high-profile figures, but something always seemed to falter. Then came Thomas James Burris, a real estate developer with charm, polish, and secrets of his own. Karen fell fast and hard. She was 30 and believed this was her chance at the life she'd dreamed of: husband, children, a stable home. But just before their wedding in 1980, Burris revealed that he'd had a vasectomy and could never give her children. Karen was devastated. She wanted to call it off, but her mother, in a familiar pattern, insisted they move forward for the sake of appearances. Karen complied, once again choosing someone else's comfort over her own instincts. The marriage quickly deteriorated. Burris not only squandered her finances, but also subjected her to emotional and even physical abuse. Within a year, Karen filed for divorce, but the damage was deep. She spiraled further into her eating disorder, now taking up to 90 laxative pills a night, along with dangerous doses of thyroid medication. Richard has since spoken about this period with visible pain, describing how his once vibrant sister had become a shadow of herself, still singing, still smiling for cameras, but slowly vanishing from the inside out. Even as her body failed, Karen kept performing. Her final albums were released with the same angelic clarity that had made her famous, but behind the scenes, she was collapsing. By the early 1980s, her weight had dropped to dangerously low levels, and even casual observers began noticing how frail she looked. Richard, now clean from his own addiction, begged her to seek help. In 1982, Karen finally made the brave decision to pursue treatment. She traveled to New York to meet with Dr. Stephen Levenkran, one of the few specialists in eating disorders at the time. For a moment, it seemed as though things might turn around. She gained some weight, spoke more openly about her struggles, and even participated in family therapy. But not everyone supported her path to healing. Their mother, Agnes, reportedly remained skeptical of Karen's disorder and was even critical of the therapy sessions. Richard later confirmed that while he was trying to be supportive, the family dynamic had always made it difficult for Karen to assert herself. She didn't just need medical help, she needed unconditional love, acceptance, and an emotional safety net that she never fully received. And perhaps most tragically, Karen was never allowed the time or space to heal away from public pressure. The comeback was always looming. The next album, the next performance, the next obligation. She was barely given permission to just rest. On February 4th, 1983, Karen Carpenter collapsed in her parents' home in Downey, California. She had suffered a heart attack brought on by years of abuse her body could no longer withstand. She was just 32 years old. Her death sent shockwaves through the music industry and the world. Fans who had adored her were devastated. Her passing brought anorexia nervosa into public consciousness for the first time, sparking conversations that had long been silenced or ignored. But for Richard, the grief was layered. He had lost his sister, his musical partner, his friend Dan. He had to live with the knowledge that he hadn't seen the full scope of her pain until it was too late. In the years since, Richard has worked tirelessly to preserve Karen's legacy. He's remastered their albums, released unreleased tracks, and granted interviews that revealed the truth behind their fame and the cost it carried. One of the most heart-wrenching confirmations came when he finally addressed the rumors that had lingered for decades, that Karen's greatest battles were not with the media or the music industry, but with her own family's inability to see her for who she truly was. In those quiet moments, away from the microphones and record deals, Karen Carpenter was a woman longing to be heard, not just in song, but in soul. And now, at last, the world is listening, even in her final years as her health visibly declined. What Karen Carpenter craved most wasn't just medical treatment. It was warmth, love, and emotional safety. Richard Carpenter, ever devoted and protective, saw his sister's struggles and tried to intervene. But nothing pained Karen more than the quiet distance from her mother, Agnes. Richard has since revealed that the coldness Karen felt was unbearable. Agnes wasn't overtly cruel, but it was her silence, her refusal to acknowledge. The severity of Karen's illness and the emotional turmoil beneath the surface that hurt the most. Karen had spent her entire life seeking her mother's approval, wanting nothing more than to be seen, validated, and embraced as more than just the girl behind Richard's music. But that acceptance never truly came. Agnes's emotional detachment was a knife that slowly cut through Karen's already fragile heart. Despite everything she had achieved, the platinum records, sold-out concerts, the millions of adoring fans, she still felt invisible to the one person she wanted love from the most. That emptiness, that ache for maternal connection, became just another weight she carried into her illness. By September 1982, Karen's physical condition had deteriorated so severely that hospitalization was the only option. At Lenox Hill Hospital in New York, doctors began an aggressive intravenous feeding regimen to save her life. The goal was simple: help her body regain essential weight, but the consequences were catastrophic. After years of chronic malnutrition and bodily trauma, Karen's heart was too weakened to handle the rapid changes. The very effort to heal her nearly destroyed her. Her Her body, once celebrated for the voice it carried, was no longer strong enough to survive the treatment it so desperately needed. Despite her pain, both physical and emotional, Karen Carpenter never abandoned her dedication to music. She performed one final time on December 17, 1982, at a small event at the Buckley School in Sherman Oaks, California. The setting was far from the grand stages she once commanded, but those who were there witnessed a piece of history, what would unknowingly become Karen's farewell performance. Her voice, though frail in body, remained hauntingly beautiful, a final echo of the extraordinary talent that had captivated the world. No one present that day could have imagined that they were watching the last public appearance of a woman who had once ruled the airwaves and redefined what it meant to be vulnerable and powerful all at once. Just weeks later, on the morning of February 4th, 1983, Karen was found collapsed on the floor of her bedroom in her parents' home. Her mother, Agnes, who had failed to show the warmth Karen so desperately sought in life, was the one to discover her unconscious and fading. Karen was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Her heart, fragile, overworked, and weakened by years of self-inflicted damage, had simply given out. She was only 32 years old. Her death was more than a tragedy. It was a cultural reckoning. It forced the world to confront the dangers of eating disorders and the cost of silence, not just from society, but from the people closest to us. Yet, even in death, parts of Karen's story remained hidden. In 1989, 6 years after her passing, CBS released a biographical film about Karen's life. The movie captured her rise to fame, her dazzling performances, and her musical genius, but it did so while omitting critical truths. Under pressure from Richard and Agnes, the filmmaker softened or entirely removed key elements of Karen's suffering, especially her complex relationship with her mother, and the emotional toll it took. Rather than confront the full weight of Karen's emotional trauma, the film chose to preserve the image of the smiling, elegant singer adored by millions. It's a decision Richard has since expressed mixed feelings about. At the time, perhaps he too wasn't ready to face the entire truth. Grief is complicated. When you lose someone you love, especially a sibling who shared your entire artistic journey, the instinct to protect their memory can overpower the need to tell the full story. Still, in the decades that followed, Richard gradually shifted from protector of an image to guardian of a legacy. He began restoring and re-releasing the Carpenters' catalog, ensuring that Karen's voice continued to touch listeners old and new. He lovingly curated unreleased tracks, oversaw remasters, and made certain that the emotional richness of their music would transcend generations. It wasn't just about preserving songs, it was about preserving her spirit. And in doing so, Richard eventually found the strength to begin sharing the deeper truths of Karen's life. The ones the world hadn't heard. In a candid interview, Richard offered a more intimate portrait of his sister, finally confirming long-standing suspicions and rumors that had surrounded her story for years. "There's so much about Karen that the public never knew," he said. "She wasn't just an angelic voice. She was a passionate person carrying an enormous amount of pain." Spoke about the pressure Karen faced not just from the demands of the music industry or the eyes of the public, from within their own family. Was constantly measuring herself against unrealistic expectations. She wanted to be loved without conditions, but instead she felt like she had to earn approval by being thin, perfect, obedient. Richard admitted that they had all misunderstood the gravity of her illness. "I saw her gradually change," he confessed. "But none of us truly understood how serious the problem was. By the time we realized, it may have been too late." These words, spoken years after Karen's death, carry the weight of both clarity and regret. They reveal how easy it is to miss the warning signs when pain is hidden behind a smile. And they also reflect a brother's journey, not only to remember his sister, but to finally understand her. It was a revelation that humanized Karen even more. She was no longer just a victim of a silent illness, she was a symbol of strength wrapped in vulnerability. Love hidden behind a curtain of longing. One of the most poignant chapters in Richard's quest to honor Karen came in 1996 with the posthumous release of her solo album. Originally recorded in 1979, the project had been shelved for years, deemed too different, too risky. or perhaps too personal to fit the carefully crafted image of the Carpenters. But this solo work was Karen's voice in its rawest form, a glimpse into what she might have become if she had lived longer, been freer, or had the space to fully explore her individuality. The songs on the album were bold, emotionally complex, and mature. They weren't built for chart domination. They were expressions of her own truth. Listening to them now, you hear more than melodies. You hear Karen's cry for creative autonomy. Her attempt to step out from the shadow of her brother, her family, and her fame. Richard has said that if the album had been released while she was alive, perhaps things might have unfolded differently. Maybe she would have been validated in ways that transcended applause. Maybe she would have finally felt heard for who she truly was, not just the girl with the pretty voice. That what if still lingers in Richard's words and in the shoaling. Hearts of fans around the world, Karen Carpenter's story doesn't end with her death. It lingers in every soft note, every aching lyric, every tear-soaked tribute posted by fans who weren't even born when she passed. Her legacy is more than musical, that's emotional, psychological, and profoundly human. She gave the world a voice so beautiful that it masked her pain, and in doing so, taught us how easily the brightest lights can hide the deepest shadows. Richard's revelations don't diminish her, they deepen her. They remind us that icons are still people, that vulnerability doesn't make us weak, and that silence, especially within families, can be just as deadly as any disease. Karen Carpenter's life was a symphony suite, sorrowful, powerful, and unfinished. And though the final note may have come too soon, its echo still resonates, reminding us that behind every voice we admire may be a story we've yet to truly hear. So what do you think about Karen Carpenter's tumultuous journey? Has Richard's honesty changed the way you see her? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't already, follow us for more untold stories and powerful legacies right here on our channel.